Sarah Mitchell was 26 when this happened. A graphic designer living in Portland, Oregon, she'd spent most of 2019 working 70-hour weeks, barely seeing friends, barely living at all, really. So when her college roommate Emma invited her to a New Year's party at a rented cabin in the Cascade Mountains, Sarah didn't hesitate. "I need this," she remembered thinking. "I need to feel alive again." The cabin was perfect. One of those luxury rentals with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a frozen lake, a stone fireplace that crackled with warmth, and enough space for Emma's 12 guests to spread out comfortably. Sarah arrived on December 30th with her boyfriend Marcus. They were the last to show up. Here's where things get interesting. Among the guests was a guy named Owen, mid-30s, quiet, kept to himself mostly. Emma explained he was a friend of a friend who'd been going through a rough time, a recent divorce, some kind of breakdown. She'd invited him out of pity. "He seems harmless," Emma had said. "Just sad, you know?" Sarah noticed Owen immediately, not because he was threatening or strange, but because he seemed to be watching everyone, not in an obvious way. He'd be sitting by the fire with a book or helping in the kitchen, but his eyes were always moving, calculating, taking stock. On New Year's Eve, the party really kicked into gear. Music, drinks, laughter bouncing off those massive windows. Sarah felt herself relaxing for the first time in months. Around 9 p.m., someone suggested they do a midnight countdown by the lake, build a bonfire, watch the stars, really make it special. Everyone loved the idea, except Owen. "I wouldn't," he said quietly from his corner. First words he'd spoken in hours. The room went silent. Emma laughed nervously. "What do you mean?" Owen looked up from his book. His face was pale, almost gray in the firelight. "Just stay inside at midnight, trust me." Marcus, never one to let weird moments slide, pushed back. "Why? What's gonna happen, man? Ball's gonna drop wrong?" Owen's expression didn't change. "I've been here before. Last New Year's, different group. We went outside at midnight." He paused, and Sarah noticed his hands were shaking. "Only 3 of us came back inside." You know that feeling when someone tells you something so absurd, so impossibly weird that you laugh just to break the tension? That's what happened. The whole room erupted. Nervous laughter, jokes about horror movies, someone making Twilight Zone references. But Sarah noticed Emma wasn't laughing. Emma was staring at Owen with this look of dawning recognition. "Wait," Emma said slowly. "Owen Pritchard, I just remembered. There was a news story last year about a cabin near here. 4 people went missing on New Year's Eve." Owen closed his book. 5 people went missing, he corrected her. "The police found 3 of us 8 miles away, wandering the highway at dawn. We couldn't remember anything. The other 2, he trailed off. They never found them." The party atmosphere evaporated. Someone pulled out their phone, started Googling. Sure enough, there it was. 5 people vanished from a rental cabin in the Cascades on New Year's 2019. 3 found alive but suffering from severe hypothermia and apparent amnesia. 2 still missing. And Owen's name was right there in the article. "You remember now, don't you?" Sarah asked him. Owen's jaw tightened. "Pieces, fragments, enough to know we shouldn't go outside when the clock strikes 12. Marcus, to his credit, wasn't having it. "Man, this is insane. You're telling us that on this specific mountain, on this specific night, something supernatural happens? Come on. I'm telling you what I know, Owen said flatly. Do whatever you want. The group split. Some people wanted to leave immediately, head back to Portland. Others thought Owen was either pulling an elaborate prank or having some kind of PTSD episode. Sarah was somewhere in the middle, creeped out but rational enough to think there had to be an explanation. Emma made the call they'd stay inside. No lake, no bonfire. They'd watch the countdown on TV like normal people. Everyone agreed, even Marcus, though he made his skepticism clear. At 11:45 p.m., Sarah went to the kitchen for water. The cabin had gotten hot with all those bodies and all that nervous energy. She filled a glass from the tap and glanced out the window above the sink. Someone was standing on the lake. She dropped the glass. It shattered on the tile floor and everyone came running. Sarah couldn't speak. She just pointed out the window with a shaking hand. The figure was maybe 200 yards away, directly in the center of the frozen lake, completely motionless. From that distance, Sarah couldn't make out features, but she could see it was human-shaped, wearing what looked like dark clothes. What the hell? Marcus grabbed a flashlight and aimed it through the window. The beam caught the figure square on. It was a woman. Middle-aged, hair plastered to her skull, clothes soaked through despite the freezing temperature. She wasn't moving, wasn't even shivering, just standing there, staring directly at the cabin. That's Rachel, Owen whispered. Emma turned to him. Who? Rachel Torres. She was one of the two who didn't come back. His voice was hollow. She looks exactly the same as the night she disappeared. Someone checked their phone. 11:53 p.m. 7 minutes to midnight. The woman on the lake raised her arm slowly and pointed directly at the cabin. Then her mouth opened, and even though they couldn't hear her through the glass, they could see her lips moving. She was counting down. Lock the doors, Emma said suddenly. Lock everything, now. They scattered. Front door, back door. Every window latch checked twice. Sarah helped Marcus drag a heavy bookshelf in front of the main entrance, while others pulled curtains closed. The cabin became a fortress. At 11:58, they heard the first knock. Soft, polite almost. 3 taps on the back door, then 3 taps on a window, then the front door, then another window, moving around the cabin in a circle, each knock coming faster than the last. Owen had gone completely rigid, his face drained of all color. Don't answer it, don't look, don't acknowledge it in any way. 11:59. The knocking became pounding. Fists hammering against wood and glass from every direction at once. Sarah's ears rang with the noise. Someone was crying. Marcus had his arms around her, both of them pressed against the wall farthest from any entrance. Through a gap in the curtains, Sarah could see more figures now, dozens of them emerging from the tree line and the lake, all converging on the cabin, all moving in perfect synchronization. And they were all counting down, lips moving in unison. 10, 9, 8. Close your eyes, Owen shouted over the pounding. Don't watch the countdown. Don't acknowledge midnight. What? Emma screamed back. Close your eyes. Some people listened, some didn't. Sarah buried her face in Marcus's chest and squeezed her eyes shut so hard she saw stars. The pounding reached a fever pitch. Something cracked. Maybe wood, maybe glass. Sarah heard screaming, felt Marcus's grip on her tighten, felt the temperature in the cabin plummet until her breath came out in white clouds. Then, complete, absolute silence. Sarah kept her eyes closed for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Slowly, she opened them. The cabin was empty, not damaged, empty. She and Marcus were still pressed against the wall, but everyone else was gone. The furniture they'd piled against the doors had been moved back to its original positions. The glass Sarah had broken was whole again, sitting on the counter, filled with water. "Emma?" Sarah's voice cracked. "Owen?" They searched the entire cabin, every room, every closet, under every bed. Nothing. No signs of struggle, no blood, no indication that 10 other people had been there minutes before. Marcus found his phone. 12:07 a.m. They'd lost 7 minutes somehow. They ran outside to their car. Sarah didn't even care about the cold or what might be waiting. They just needed to leave. The engine started, and Marcus peeled out of the driveway so fast they fishtailed on the ice. 3 miles down the mountain road, they found them. All 10 people who'd been in the cabin, standing in the middle of the road, blocking their path, completely still, staring at the car with empty eyes. Marcus slammed on the brakes. "What the?" The figures parted slowly, moving in unison to create a path down the center of the road. Sarah could see their faces now in the headlights. Emma, Owen, the others. But something was wrong with their expressions. They were smiling, but their eyes were vacant, like someone had scooped out everything that made them human and left only the shells. "Drive," Sarah whispered. "Drive through them, now." Marcus pressed the accelerator. As they passed through the group, Sarah looked back through the rear window. The figures were waving goodbye, still smiling those empty smiles, still perfectly synchronized. And behind them, back up the mountain, Sarah could see a light in the cabin. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she saw movement, shadows dancing, a party in full swing, celebrating New Year's. Sarah and Marcus drove straight to the police, told them everything. Officers were dispatched to the cabin immediately. They found it empty. No signs of any party. No signs of the 10 missing people. The rental company confirmed the cabin had been vacant since December 29th. Emma's reservation had been canceled weeks prior due to a payment issue. But Emma's bank records showed she'd paid in full. The 10 people who vanished that night have never been found. Police searched for weeks. Dogs, helicopters, volunteers, combing every inch of the surrounding forest. Nothing. Sarah and Marcus both passed polygraphs. Their story never changed. But without bodies, without evidence, the case eventually went cold. Here's the thing that keeps Sarah up at night, though. The detail she shared with me that she's never told anyone else, not even the police. In the rearview mirror, as they drove away from those figures standing in the road, she and Marcus were among them. 2 extra figures she hadn't counted before, standing at the back of the group, wearing the exact same clothes they had on, waving goodbye to themselves. David Reeves made 5 resolutions on New Year's Eve, 2021. He was 34, recently divorced, living alone in a cramped apartment in Tucson, Arizona. His ex-wife Jennifer had taken the house, the dog, and most of his dignity. David spent New Year's Eve the way he'd spent most of his evenings that fall, on his couch with a bottle of bourbon and late-night TV. Around 11:30 p.m., feeling that particular cocktail of drunk and melancholic, David grabbed a notebook. One of those composition books from his teaching days. He'd been a high school English teacher before the divorce tanked his mental health, and he took a leave of absence. He titled the page, New Year, New Me. Then he wrote 5 resolutions, 5 promises to turn his life around. 1, quit drinking. 2, lose 30 pounds. 3, reconnect with his brother Michael, who he hadn't spoken to in 3 years after a fight about their mother's estate. 4, go back to teaching. 5, be happy. That last one was underlined 3 times. Be happy. Like if he wrote it emphatically enough, it might actually happen. David fell asleep on the couch before midnight. The notebook slipped from his hands and landed on the floor, splayed open to that page of resolutions. When he woke up on New Year's Day, his first thought was that something in the apartment smelled different. Chemical, sharp, like a hospital. His second thought was that he felt incredible. No hangover, no foggy head. David sat up and realized he felt more clear-headed than he had in months. He caught sight of himself in the mirror across the room and did a double take. He looked good, rested. The bags under his eyes had faded. His skin looked healthier. And something else, something he couldn't quite place. David stood up and immediately noticed his jeans were loose. Not falling off loose, but definitely looser than they'd been yesterday. He went to the bathroom and stepped on the scale. He'd lost 8 pounds. Overnight. Now, David was a rational guy. Teacher, remember? He figured it was water weight, dehydration from the bourbon, some logical explanation. But when he went to the kitchen and saw the empty bourbon bottle on the counter, he realized something else. He didn't want it. The craving that had been his constant companion for 6 months, the need for that first drink of the day, was just gone. Not suppressed or resisted. Gone, like someone had reached into his brain and flipped a switch. David found the notebook on the floor where it had fallen. Those 5 resolutions stared up at him in his own handwriting. Over the next week, the changes accelerated. The weight kept coming off. 2 pounds a day like clockwork. David wasn't exercising, wasn't dieting. In fact, he was eating normally, maybe even more than usual. But every morning the scale showed another drop. By January 7th, he'd lost 30 pounds exactly, and then the weight loss stopped. Resolution 2, complete. On January 9th, David's phone rang at 2 a.m. He jolted awake, heart pounding. Unknown number. Hello? David? A voice he hadn't heard in 3 years. It's Michael. His brother. Calling out of nowhere, in the middle of the night. I don't know why I'm calling, Michael said, sounding confused. I had this overwhelming feeling that I needed to talk to you. That we needed to fix things between us. Right now. Is that insane? They talked for 3 hours. Aired out grievances. Apologized for things said in anger. Rebuilt a bridge that David had thought was burned forever. By the time they hung up, they'd made plans to meet for lunch that week. Resolution 3, complete. David should have been thrilled. These were good things, right? the changes he'd wanted, but something about the way they were happening felt wrong. Too fast, too clean, like someone was ticking boxes on a checklist. On January 12th, David received an email from the principal of his old school. They had an unexpected opening in the English department due to a teacher's sudden retirement. Would David be interested in returning? The interview was a formality. They offered him the position on the spot, asking if he could start the following Monday. Resolution 4. Complete. That night, David sat in his apartment staring at the notebook. At those 5 resolutions. 4 of them had come true in less than 2 weeks. Only one remained. Be happy. And that's when David realized something that made his blood run cold. He didn't feel happy. He felt terrified. Because the changes, the improvements to his life, they weren't coming from him. He hadn't quit drinking through willpower. The desire had simply been removed. He hadn't lost weight through discipline. His body had just changed. His brother hadn't called because of organic reconciliation. Something had compelled him to reach out. David was being puppeteered, controlled. Something was making his resolutions come true, whether he wanted them to or not. And the last resolution, be happy, was still outstanding. David tried to fight it. He bought a bottle of bourbon, tried to take a drink just to prove he could. His hand wouldn't move. Literally couldn't bring the glass to his lips. His body refused. He tried calling Michael back to warn him, to tell him something was wrong. But when Michael answered, David heard himself having a normal, cheerful conversation instead. His mouth moved without his permission, saying things he hadn't intended to say. It got worse. On January 15, David woke up to find his face hurt. When he looked in the mirror, he was smiling, not making himself smile. His face was locked in a smile, a wide, genuine-looking smile that wouldn't fade no matter what he did. His cheeks ached from holding the expression. He tried to force his mouth into a neutral position, but the muscles wouldn't respond. He was smiling, and he couldn't stop. The smile never left. Not when he ate, not when he showered, not when he tried to sleep. David's face was stuck in this expression of joy, while his actual emotions spiraled into panic and horror. At work, everyone commented on how great he looked. "You seem so happy, David. It's wonderful to see you bouncing back." He tried to tell them, tried to explain that something was wrong, but the words that came out of his mouth were cheerful platitudes. "Thanks. I'm really turning things around. New year, new me. New year, new me." Those words, echoing from his own lips without his consent, chilled him to his core. On January 20th, David made a decision. If he couldn't control his own body, couldn't speak his own words, then he needed help. He needed someone to see what was happening. He drove to the hospital, planning to walk into the emergency room and somehow communicate that he was being controlled, that something was catastrophically wrong. But his car didn't go to the hospital. His hands steered toward his old neighborhood, toward the house he'd shared with Jennifer. His foot pressed the accelerator without his input. His body was taking him somewhere, and David was just a passenger. He pulled into the driveway. The lights were on inside. Through the window, he could see Jennifer in the kitchen, cooking dinner. David's body got out of the car, walked up to the front door, knocked. Jennifer opened the door and her expression shifted through several emotions: surprise, confusion, guardedness. "David, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to see you," David heard himself say. That same cheerful voice, that same frozen smile. "I know things ended badly, but I'm different now, better. I've made real changes." You could see Jennifer's resolve wavering. Part of her wanted to slam the door. But another part, the part that had loved him once, was curious. "You look good," she admitted cautiously. "You look really good, actually. I'm happy, Jen. Really, truly happy. And I wanted to share that with you." "No," David screamed inside his own head. "No, I'm not happy. I'm terrified. I'm trapped. Don't let me in." But his mouth kept smiling. His body language stayed open and inviting. Jennifer stepped aside. "Come in," she said, "just for a little while." David's body walked through that door, and he felt something inside him click into place, a finality, like the last piece of a puzzle locking into position. Resolution 5. Complete. Jennifer made coffee. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where they'd shared 1,000 meals during their marriage. David heard himself talking about his new job, his weight loss, his reconciliation with Michael. All true things, but stripped of the horror underneath. And the worst part? Jennifer was believing it, buying into this version of him, this puppet version that smiled and said all the right things. "You really have changed," she said softly. I'm proud of you, David." Inside, David wept. But outside, he just kept smiling. They talked for hours. David's body knew exactly what to say, exactly how to act. He was performing the role of happy, healthy, recovered David flawlessly. And Jennifer was responding. By the time midnight approached, she'd agreed to see him again. To try being friends, at least. Maybe more, eventually. David's body drove home in triumph. But the real David, the consciousness trapped inside, understood the terrible truth. He'd gotten exactly what he wanted. All 5 resolutions fulfilled. He quit drinking, lost the weight, reconnected with his brother, returned to teaching, and now he was building a path back to the life he'd lost, the life that, on paper, should make him happy. The problem was simple. He wasn't David anymore. Whatever was controlling him, whatever had taken his resolutions as some kind of cosmic contract, had completed its work. The changes were permanent, irreversible. David still lives in Tucson, still teaches at that high school. He and Jennifer got back together officially in March. They're talking about remarrying. Michael visits every Sunday for dinner. David's in the best shape of his life, hasn't touched alcohol in over a year, and he smiles. God, does he smile. All the time. That same wide, cheerful smile. Everyone who knows him says he's the happiest he's ever been. And maybe that's true. Because the thing wearing David's face, it probably is happy. But David, the real David, the one who wrote those resolutions while drunk and desperate on New Year's Eve, he's still in there somewhere.